Hello, and welcome to another edition of Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you like this video, please push like and share with your family, friends, neighbors, enemies, etc. Yes, I have the printer behind me, my famous printer. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about shakedowns. And the reason this subject came up was because earlier today, a friend of mine that I did time with by the name of Mike Miller, shout out to you, Mike Miller, sent me a photo of a unit that had been basically destroyed during a shakedown. And I'll get into what that actually means. For those of you who've never been to prison, I'm sure when you think of shakedown, it's obvious you think of searches, right? I'm talking basically about shaking down cells, units, blocks, whatever. That's what the focus of this video will be on. And some of the interesting things that have been found during shakedowns that I can recall. And I'm sure there's plenty more that I'm not going to be able to recall. These are just off the top of my head. They're different kind of shakedowns. I believe it is bureau policy or staff policy that an officer is required or is supposed to shake down or do cell searches, search 5 cells each shift. So if the night guy comes on after 4 o'clock, that'd be second shift, third shift, after 4 o'clock, he's required to at least go and thoroughly examine 5 cells. I believe it's something like that. I do know that the officers who were gung-ho, who were really on their job, C.O. Snyder and Terre Haute comes to mind. That's what their policy was. And I do know that the rookies too would come in and they would get X amount of cells, and I'm sure it was 5. So there's officer shakedowns where the staff that's working the block will come through and he'll pick a cell, either based on an inmate not standing up for count on time, an inmate mouthing off to him, maybe the inmate's suspected of dealing in illegal contraband, whatever the case, or just random cell checks. Also, officers keep a list of cells, and they'll go and they'll like check 5 off, and they'll finish, within a month or whatever, and then go back and start over again, however long it takes, depending on the prison size. Anyway, so there's that kind of shakedown, and then there's unit shakedowns, and there's institutional shakedowns. So unit and institutional shakedowns can be horrible for prisoners. And here's the deal. When they call a unit shakedown, especially an institutional shakedown, all staff are required to come and help search the cell blocks. And this includes the secretaries, everybody that works in the office, people that, medical staff, by the way, they are correctional officers first, then medical staff. People that normally wouldn't be in the cell houses are required to go and do cell searches. And this could pose a big problem, or it can work out great. Usually, the females that work in medical or the secretaries, they don't want to be in there doing that. And it could work out to your benefit if you're a prisoner, because they just want to go through the motions, act like they're really doing a thorough cell search. Then you have the mean ladies, the ones that hate inmates, listen to their phone calls and can't stand because they're manipulating their families and friends, manipulating girls or whatever. They just have a bad view of prisoners, and they just want to come and just screw everything up. They just want to come and rip you apart. Now, there's a policy that will state what you are and are not allowed in your cell. For example, 5 pairs of underwear, 3 shirts, I'm making this up, 4 pairs of pants, 2 pens, 2 writing tablets, 1 radio, and so on and so on and so on. In the newer prisons, staff generally is really on the ball about the amount of items that you can have in a cell. The prisons are new, they're easier to search because over the years they've made prisons more search friendly. They've, corrections changes and it advances. And for example, through the years, you've had solid metal lockers, and now the lockers are like metal grate, so you can see through them. That way an officer can see if an inmate has something like wine cooking in their locker, even though there's ways to disguise that as well. The older prisons are where you really find crazy shit during a shakedown, or I should say the officers find crazy stuff. And inmates who come in after the cells or the unit is shook down will usually hear about or see what the officers have found that's like crazy bizarre. For example, there was an incident involving staff in USP Leavenworth back in 1998, maybe 1999. The staff went to go break up a fight. Inmate accidentally either stabbed, nicked, or punched the staff member. And of course, that pisses off not only staff, but the warden. Then the warden will do like, okay, oh, that's what you want to do to my officers? Even though it's one person that did it accidentally. Oh, we're going to rip you guys apart and take all your shit. In older prisons, you accumulate a lot of stuff that you normally wouldn't have, again, in the newer prisons. And that's because they're old, easier to hide. A lot more spaces where you can hide stuff. And then the prisons are old, so the mentality is, you know what? The conditions are horrible here. There's bugs everywhere. The paint, it was built 100 years ago. Let them have whatever the hell they want. That's was the mentality at Leavenworth, certain areas at Lewisburg, and for sure Terre Haute FCI, where I left. That was the last prison I was in. Anyway, let me get back to this. So they do an institutional shakedown. All inmates are locked in our cells for days. And they go unit by unit. Here they come. And there's dozens of staff, usually in plain clothes. And what they'll do is they'll start on the first cell or the last cell, whatever, or to the middle. Usually it's the first cell. They'll make both people in that cell cuff up. So, inmate, stand up. Put your hands behind your back, come to the bean slot. So you like crawl, boom, they cuff you up, then they bring you out and they put you in like the TV room or a common area where you can be watched. They will shake you down. They'll do a search of your body. Usually we're in boxers and flip-flops with our shirts off, so it's not really hard. And then they'll go in the cell. And of course, there's so many staff members, so they'll do like the first 10 cells. So you have like 20 prisoners will all be in the room together. Talking about, man, I hope they don't get my stinger. A stinger is a heating element. It's just you get a basic cord and you put metal on 2 ends of it, and it heats water, food, whatever. Man, I hope they don't get my stinger. Man, I hope they don't get my fiend books. That's porn. Porn is no longer allowed in the BOP after 2000, I believe. Or whatever. Or I hope they don't get my dope. My God, I have so much dope, I didn't put it away, blah, blah, blah. And that's usually the conversations you're hearing as staff is shaking everything down. There was a Cuban. We called him the Dancing Cuban. He was part of the Mariel boat lift. And he was crazy, funny, always laughing, always smiling. Probably had like the best time out of anybody I've ever seen. Just good-natured person, but he was nuts. He was single cell, and when they came out of his cell, they took a mattress. By the way, you are allowed by policy 1 mattress. In older prisons, you can have, it just depends. I had usually 2 mattresses pretty much the whole time I was in. And you can also cut a mattress and stuff it so you can have a big fat mattress. There's little games that we play. It's cat and mouse. So I remember some staff coming out of this Cuban cell just like, oh my God. What he did was he cut a hole in the center of his mattress and he was having sex with it. So he's putting like Vaseline, he was putting gloves in it. They call it a Fifi bag for those of you who don't know. Fifi bags are usually gloves. People put lotion in them. I've seen chicken skin used in there. It feels, they say, and I swear, if I would have used one, I swear I would have said it, and it's not a big deal to me. I never used a Fifi bag. Most people probably won't believe that, but whatever. It's to masturbate with. So he made some sort of bed. He made like a Fifi bag in his bed, and it's supposed to feel like a vagina, okay? So he was screwing his bed. And that was like, everybody was just tripping off of it. I mean, he had it set up like really well, apparently. That was one of the first things during the shakedown that was odd or, outside of the norm. In Terre Haute, where I left, FCI Terre Haute, there was no telling what people had in their cells. They had crock pots. You're not allowed crock pots. George Foreman grills. I've seen 2 of them. When I left the prison, my neighbor had one. Of course, stingers, battery chargers, cell phones, adapters. What else? I've thought of it when I was in the shower a little while ago. There was, it's the grease bowl. So there was a guy named Debo who used to fry burritos, and he had a bowl, and he'd deep fry burritos. That was his hustle. So when we had a unit shakedown, that's what he was mostly concerned about. I got hit with a squirrel. We have 13 lion ground squirrels, I guess that's what they're called in Terre Haute. And we used to get them when they're babies and make them pets in the cell. I had 3 of them over my stay there. And they came in one time and did a big shakedown and found the squirrel and freaked out. And then at one point, a lot of people started getting squirrels, and some officer got bit, and they made it like a disciplinary if you've got a ground squirrel in the cell and all that. The reason I came up with this is because my friend Mike Miller sent me a photo of a shakedown that is the thumbnail. And that is perfect example of what a unit looks like after a serious shakedown, either a unit shakedown or an institutional shakedown. If you look at that thumbnail, you can tell many, dozens and dozens of staff have been in that cell block. And let's say, for an example, that an officer gets assaulted, like I said earlier. They're going to come in pissed. Or if the staff is pissed off at the executive staff, they don't really want to do a shakedown, but they're ordered to, they'll come in mad and they'll just start tearing stuff apart. I have had an officer do a shakedown in my cell and rip pictures of who's now my wife, off the wall, believing it was like some kind of a pinup or magazine cutouts that I had, not believing that she was with me. But that flipped me out. That can cause a problem. Staff do that. They'll throw away radios. They'll throw away MP3 players. We were allowed MP3 players. They sold them on the commissary. Now, you're only allowed one, and you're only allowed one radio, but it just depends on who goes in the cell if they're going to take it. Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter if you're supposed to have this stuff or not. When you've had this stuff a while, and almost all the staff that works the block knows that you have this stuff, whether that's extra radios, extra mattresses. Oh, I was a big extra pillow freak. And by the way, I had a big, like, long, fluffy pillow. I always had big pillows for whatever reason. Used to keep a couple. That was one of my big concerns. I hope they don't take that damn pillow. And if they do, I hope they take the small pillow, not the big pillow. The big pillows are harder to get. They're more expensive. Some people make them, whatever. But you are like on pins and needles because you just don't want your stuff taken. And you never know what it's going to be. And sometimes, it's true. A lot of prisoners keep too much shit in their cell. It's like unnecessary. It's almost like a sickness or a disease. You don't need 50 fingernail clippers. You don't need 50 razors. Commissary, that's debatable. You're only allowed a certain number of commissary items that will fit in your locker and or in tubs under your bed if they have plastic tubs, if they sell them. They did it Terre Haute, they took them out, and then they made them contraband at some point. They grandfathered some in for a while, whatever, but you can never have too much commissary, although I will say there are people that don't know how to properly seal their stuff, and it creates rodents and it creates a pest problem. So that's absolutely true. But you can never kind of have too much commissary as long as you can maneuver in your cell, because you're always going to use commissary. Excess amount of shoes. I went through a shoe trip where I had like 50 pairs of shoes, and I had to get every new pair of tennis shoes. That was when I first started out, especially back then. And they'll come in, and if you're not supposed to have, more than 2 pairs of tennis shoes, they're going to take them in some cases. The policy states that they're supposed to write you up. They're supposed to write a slip saying that they've confiscated your personal property. And then you have the option of either letting it be destroyed or sending it home. If you send it home, you have to pay for the postage. And, people with life sentences, I did send something home one time. I forgot what it was now. I think radio. I'm not even sure. But that's how that works. But 8 times out of 10, they're not filling out any forms. If the inmates cannot see who goes in their cell. Okay, so for example, if there's a TV room that you can't see who's going in your cell, if they know, and if staff knows an inmate can't watch you, they go hard. They don't care. They're going in and they're doing what the warden says. They're eliminating stuff. Again, look at the thumbnail and you'll see the excess stuff on the floor of the range. And by the way, Terre Haute, in case I didn't said this or not, I'm not sure. Terre Haute was set up a lot like that cell that you see on this thumbnail. That was newer, but Terre Haute's older, but the narrowness and everybody, the day room was right in the middle. So imagine all that noise. Oh, it's chaotic. There was laundry shakedowns that would happen when I first got to Terre Haute. That would happen about every 3 months because people would hog too many blankets. For some reason, people feel they need 50 blankets. I used to have 3 and probably only needed 2. So again, that's excess stuff, extra stuff. It's a comfort issue, and especially when you're doing life, it makes you feel better to A, beat the man, and B, to have all the comforts, The George Foreman grill, for example. Now, where did they get that? Staff brought that in. They had it out in probably the rec shack, or one of the inmates stole it after the staff threw it away. Yeah, the George Foreman grill was a big deal because the guy wanted $200 for it, and I really wanted that George Foreman grill. And that's hard to hide, by the way. When the staff comes in, usually this is how it works. If you have a cell that's really neat, kept clean, in the old prisons you can paint your cells, dial them up. You're not supposed to, but we did. That is, I had like my cell immaculate, trimming done proper. I even had the cinder blocks. I had lines in them, so I had my walls white, and then I made blue lines in the cinder block. It looked awesome. Yeah, they would make me cover it a few times, and I'd just do it again. But when you have a cell that's hooked up, dialed in, really, really nice, floor waxed. You can wax your floors. You're not supposed to, but we did in Terre Haute. Floor wax. The officers are more reluctant to really tear apart your stuff. And that's a note to, a little reminder, a little note you guys want to keep that are going to prison or that may go to prison one day. Always keep your stuff neat if you don't want to lose it, if you've got contraband in it or excess property. Keep it neat, and I'll tell you something else. Keep your cell door open. A Crip shot caller for the Crip out of California taught me that a long time ago. Every day he'd get up and he'd keep his cell door open. He had a lot of contraband in there. His cell was immaculate. He was single-celled, and staff never, ever, ever shook that guy down. If they did, they'd walk in, and when they walk in a cell that's that nice, they almost want to tiptoe. They don't want to touch stuff because it looks too nice. They're like, whoa, this guy's sharp. This guy's really, he's a clean freak. Okay, Joey Testa for you in the mob genre. A lot like that. Never touched his stuff. He kept Contraband in his cell like a lot of us did. But it is, when you lose something that you've had for a while, example, a big pillow that I'm used to like propping my feet up and laying down flat on my back or whatever. It's like traumatizing. It's just, I mean, you get mad, angry, and and then when you have cops that just tear your stuff apart, they're not, when staff goes and does a shakedown, they're not supposed to destroy your cell. They do. Especially if staff got assaulted or it was some major deal, or there's gang fights. They hate gang fight. They hate fighting in the chow hall. They'll punish the rest of the population for the actions of few by tearing apart cell blocks. And it sucks coming back to your cell, hands cuffed behind your back. You're led by an officer who had nothing to do with the shakedown. You don't know who was in your cell, and they put you in and your shit's everywhere, scattered on the floor. Legal work, paper. I mean, some of them can be really vicious. I've had paperwork, legal work thrown away. I know guys that have had entire trial transcripts. They had transcripts that were in box, all thrown away. And when they run people out of the block, this is another thing. A lot of times during these shakedowns, they'll run inmates all the way out of the block. They'll send you to the yard for 2 or 3 hours, the whole unit, and they'll just go through it with the fine-tooth comb. Actually, those are probably the worst, because when you come back in, you're not in handcuffs. You can walk back in. You have to go to your cell. But everything usually is already thrown out like the thumbnail. So they throw it out on the tier, and they've already swept it, put it in dumpsters, and carted it off. They want to present a nice unit. They don't want inmates to see who did what. So all the staff's already gone. It's only a unit officer. You got the cell block, and it's like, when you walk in, you're like, they didn't touch anything. Then you go in, you open the cell doors, and everybody starts, what the fuck? Man, who got what? And then everybody's running to the unit staff saying, they got this, they got that. And yeah, those are the worst for sure. Again, I've lost tennis shoes. I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff. Oh, of course, they find knives, drugs. I mean, that's some of the common stuff. They have packaging. They sell products in the commissary now that's usually see-through. Back in the day, we had detergent. We would unseal the boxes underneath of detergent like Tide, put drugs or contraband in it, and seal it back up. Usually I kept stamps, money, currency, stamps, U.S. postal stamps is currency. I would usually put that in my Tide boxes. Peanut butter was good for dope, especially like little grams of heroin or little papers of marijuana, whatever. You just push it down in, and then the peanut butter conceals it. But staff knew all that. And sometimes during the shakedown, you'd get one that would go through your stuff like that. If it was unsealed, they would go through it. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the shakedown and how it feels. I do remember when they took pictures of Marta down, she did send in on some photo paper the photos were on paper that looked like they could have been paper or glossy pages out of a magazine. So I can see why you got confused, especially the way she looked, whatever. And then I was livid over that though. And the officer, I knew who did it, and he apologized. It was already in the trash and gone. So yeah, a little bit about shakedowns today. This isn't the story I was going to do, by the way. This is just something I decided to throw out there. Not much of a climax, right? Not much of a, but anyway, it is what it is. Hope you guys have a good day. It's Thanksgiving coming up. Have a good Thanksgiving. There will be another video tomorrow. And I have to do a video in response to one of the mob, 2 idiots. Now, take care.